Welcome to the Rare Historical Memories channel. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more videos like this one.
March wartime France, a German field telephone station laced wires through trenches, coordinating barrages, evacuations, and rations, evidence of how industrial communication stitched scattered units into a single instrument of attrition. Aboard USS Intrepid on November 26, 1944, sailors committed comrades to the Pacific, a ritual marrying tradition with grief after Japanese bombs scarred Philippine operations and reminded crews of war's unceasing arithmetic. In Chicago during 1930, four exhausted couples circled beneath bright lights for weeks, converting hunger into spectacle as depression crowds watched endurance replace employment and cash prizes masquerade as salvation. On Brisbane River in 1925, a Savoia Marchetti seaplane floated beside the wharves, proof that experimental hulls and radial engines were sewing continents together before commercial aviation learned reliability. At Serra Pelada in 1986, a barefoot miner wrested a soldier's rifle, distilling a mountainside republic of mud, where desperation, profiteering, and brittle authority collided over flecks of feverish gold. At the Peking Mission School in 1902, children climbed the Dragon's Head while cameras recorded a gentler contact zone as Qing authority thinned and missionary classrooms reframed empire through primers and play. After the July 20, 1944 plot, photographers displayed Hitler's torn, scorched trousers, a macabre artifact verifying proximity to death, and the spiraling paranoia consuming a regime already failing. In 1931, an American tinkerer balanced a portable radio inside a straw boater, imagining leisure-made wireless while boardwalks thrummed, prohibition lingered, and wearable electronics waited half a century. In Mississippi on September 21, 1955, Mose Wright rose in a hostile courtroom and pointed at Bryant and Milam, transforming private courage into public testimony that accelerated America's civil rights reckoning. Pittsburgh in 1959 held couples close within a smoky neighborhood bar, where jukebox jazz swung and union wages bought rounds, preserving a tender night before deindustrialization rewrote the city's romance. In 1911 at Coney Island, Luna Park's The Teaser hurled visitors through curves and spinning cups, emblematic of America's early embrace of mechanized amusement and mass entertainment within expanding urban leisure. Across the 19th century Great Plains, Sioux tipis, punctuated horizons, flexible homes tied to buffalo economies, and seasonal migrations, bearing designs that map kinship, ceremony, and reciprocity with land and sky. 17th century plague doctors wore beaked masks stuffed with herbs and vinegar-soaked sponges, believing aromas filtered disease, while waxed cloaks and gloves reflected early attempts at protective medicine. Around 1941 in occupied Belarus, an early Nazi gas van appears in a stark photograph, mobile killing technology used by Einsatzgruppen that foreshadowed extermination camps and revealed bureaucratized murder along eastern roads. In London circa 1900, an X-ray technician's mangled hand testifies to radiology's perilous infancy, when exposure without shielding burned skin, destroyed tissue, and seeded cancers, sacrifices pressing invention of safety protocols. In 1908 Minnesota, an Ojibwe man steadies a birch bark canoe and lowers a spear into clear water, sustaining community through practiced skill, seasonal knowledge, and respectful harvest central to Anishinaabe lifeways. In 1910 American mining country, a rescue worker poses with early breathing apparatus and lantern, fragile equipment that nevertheless saved trapped laborers and advanced safety culture after catastrophic explosions shocked public conscience. In 1966, Julie Newmar's publicity portrait as Catwoman fixed feline charisma in television memory, pairing playful menace with sleek costuming to define camp-era Batman and shape decades of pop cultural archetypes. In 1924 Paris, when winter floods swamped streets, residents balanced on chairs arranged as makeshift footbridges, improvising cooperation that let commerce, conversation, and daily rhythms continue above cold, swirling water. In October 1965 at Buckingham Palace, as the Beatles received honors, ecstatic crowds screamed at the gates, pop anthems colliding with pageantry to announce youth culture's arrival inside Britain's oldest rooms. The so-called last giant silicon tree, reputed to endure until 1899, mingles folklore with speculative geology, a parable of vanished megaflora, and 19th-century fascination with Earth's lost ages and wonders. In Xi'an, the terracotta army endures beneath earthen vaults, 8,000 warriors with chariots and horses guarding Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum and preserving imperial craftsmanship, logistics, and military order in fired clay. New York in 1930 becomes a tide of hats at street level, felt crowns and brims signaling class, work, and style as Depression-era crowds navigate traffic, newsstands, and lunchtime sidewalks. In the 1870s, an elevated railway curves above Coenty Slip beside East River docks, demonstrating engineering that lifted commuters, soot, and noise from wharves while accelerating Manhattan's expansion toward uptown neighborhoods. An early electric hairdryer resembled a science fiction helmet, tethering sitters to humming sockets and proving beauty culture's willingness to endure heat, vibration, and inconvenience in pursuit of salon-standardized styles. In 1963 New York, Richard Avedon photographed high school star Lou Alcindor, later Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, capturing length, quiet focus, and celebrity before records, skyhooks, and civil rights advocacy reshaped basketball's possibilities. The roaring lion of MGM became cinema's herald, and a rare behind-the-scenes photograph reveals handlers, cameras, and soundproofing that manufactured majesty for Hollywood's most recognizable opening sequence. Amsterdam in 1929 gathered along a canal as rescuers slung ropes and rigged cranes to hoist a struggling horse, an urban drama combining ingenuity, patience, and the city's intimate relationship with water. In 1918 at Standard Aircraft, so-called turnbuckle girls tensioned wires, gauged fittings, and finished wings, skilled wartime labor that expanded American air power while redefining industrial roles available to women. In 1945, the Mona Lisa emerged from wartime crates and returned to the Louvre, its serene face reaffirming curators' clandestine protection efforts and the resilience of European culture after occupation and bombardment. In December 1944, American bombers struck Austrian rail lines, severing junctions that fed the Reich's fronts, as the Allies exploited winter skies to choke logistics during Europe's grinding final campaign. At a public ceremony, Polish leader Władysław Gomułka smiled while a girl passed flowers over a partition, an archival glimpse of orchestrated warmth within otherwise inflexible communist choreography and carefully managed optics. During World War I, German officers posed for a formal portrait, collars and decorations asserting imperial authority, even as mechanized attrition at the Somme and Verdun redefined command, courage, and empire's limits. In 1966, a North Dakota blizzard entombed homes, cars, and railroads, immobilizing towns and recording one of the most paralyzing storms in American weather history through drifted streets and stranded prairie communities. Between 1931 and 1933, the Navy airship USS Akron cruised above Lower Manhattan, immense rigid structure symbolizing interwar aviation ambition, naval scouting dreams, and the fragile future of helium-filled American dirigibles. In 1964, a Scandinavian airline stewardess evaluated a radical uniform proposal, sleek lines promising modernity yet clashing with practicality, an experiment revealing how branding sometimes collides with comfort, safety, and workplace routines. Dangling above Shasta Lake in 1953, Paul Overby was hauled by rope from a wrecked truck cab on Pitt River Bridge, a photograph that captured near disaster, coordination, and improbable survival. In 1945, American soldiers discovered mayonnaise in the conservatory deep within the Merkers salt mine, evidence of vast Nazi art looting and the extraordinary Allied race to recover Europe's displaced masterpieces. In 1923, America, pilots and mechanics achieved the first aerial refueling beneath roaring engines, a cinematic exchange that transformed endurance flight, reimagined military reach, and expanded civilian dreams of distance and speed. In 1942, off Nova Scotia, an Allied convoy formed into columns and smokescreens, assembling escorts and merchantmen for the Atlantic crossing that sustained besieged Britain with fuel, food, munitions, and hope. In 1958, a beauty salon offered electrotherapy treatments, wiring clients to humming machines that promised rejuvenation, reflecting post-war faith in electricity, consumer science, and the expanding role of cosmetics in everyday self-care. On June 8, 1958, 19-year-old David Isom entered a segregated Florida pool and integrated it, prompting closure but declaring dignity, a breakthrough that exposed Jim Crow's absurdity and galvanized local civil rights momentum. In 1917, a young soldier posed with his mother before departure, a tender portrait carrying village hopes into industrial war, where timetables, steel, and mud would decide futures no family could foresee. The 1912 World Series matched the Boston Red Sox against the New York Giants, games culminating at Fenway, where Tris Speaker's heroics sealed a championship and deepened baseball's grip on American life. Before Allied bombs destroyed it in 1943, Munich's Brown House anchored NSDAP headquarters, where SS guards paced corridors and Hitler, with lieutenants, managed party bureaucracy that turned ideology into daily administrative power. On March 2, 1945, 4th Division Marines rushed ashore from Higgins boats at Iwo Jima, black sand swallowing boots while Japanese fire raked beaches, an image of attrition shaping the Pacific's endgame. In 1917, Theda Bara embodied Cleopatra in a spectacular silent feature now lost, her jeweled headdress and commanding gaze establishing screen vamp iconography and prefiguring Hollywood's fascination with antiquity and constructed desire. Within a German concentration camp, public execution staged terror as policy, forcing prisoners to witness calibrated cruelty, a trace of genocide that compels remembrance and names the perpetrator's systematized annihilation of civilians. In 1899, Marshall, Texas, 3 elegantly dressed women posed with confident posture and layered fabrics, recording regional grace at century's turn while asserting community presence despite segregation's tightening legal and social constraints. In 1935 Georgia, Joseph Stalin visited his mother, Kike Gelitsa and posed with Lavrenti Beria and Nestor Lakoba, a rare tableau exposing proximity between private origins and the machinery of Soviet power. On the 1954 set of Creature from the Black Lagoon, actors endured heavy suits and practical effects, forging horror before modern 3D, with underwater rigs and ingenuity shaping Universal's post-war monster imagination. On April 17, 1943, aboard USCGC Spencer, Coast Guardsmen watched a depth charge erupt, crippling U-175 and protecting a convoy, demonstrating Atlantic anti-submarine warfare and coordination between sailors, sonar, and air cover. In 1928, Los Angeles sent library bookmobiles to the bedridden, delivering stories and companionship, an experiment proving institutions could reach patients when illness or disability prevented visits to the city's reading rooms. On June 6, 1944, 2 crossed rifles in Normandy's sand marked a fallen American, an improvised grave that honored sacrifice amid amphibious landings, fire, and the fragile order carved from invasion's chaos. On July 10, 1925, teacher John T. Scopes went on trial in Dayton, Tennessee, accused of teaching evolution, a courtroom spectacle where science, religion, and publicity collided under the nation's summer sun. Photographed in 1902, chained Aboriginal prisoners stand as witnesses to colonization's brutality. Ancient custodians treated as criminals, while settler law rewrote ownership, mobility, and dignity across Australia's frontiers. An early glass negative captures Helen Keller's focused gaze, quiet intensity already shaping a life of learning and advocacy alongside Anne Sullivan, proof that touch and language could transform possibility into purpose. In 1918, the 6th Australian Light Horse moved through Sheikh Jarrah toward Mount Scopus, mounted troops threading Ottoman streets as the Palestine campaign's final months redrew Jerusalem's horizons and British imperial maps. In 1957 Charlotte, Dorothy Counts walked toward Harry Harding High as white students jeered, a poised teenager forcing America to confront segregated schooling and the moral theater of desegregation's daily courage. In 1918 England, a female gravedigger carried pickaxe and shovel through churchyard mud, labor answering wartime vacancies, while grief and resilience blurred boundaries between mourning roles and women's expanding public work. In December 1944 in Belgium, a German soldier heaves ammunition boxes forward during the counteroffensive, a snapshot of the Battle of the Bulge, where snow, fuel shortages, and artillery duels tested infantry. During the Blitz in Manchester, firefighters battled flames among shattered mills and row houses, a record of civilian endurance, incendiary raids, and the home front's nightly calculus of risk, rescue, and rubble. In Idaho in 1891, workers aligned giant wooden staves into a winding pipeline through hills and forests, early infrastructure proving how cooperative labor, surveying, and timber engineering wrestled water from rugged terrain. In 1949 at Arvia, Nunavut, a young Inuit girl climbs down into an ice igloo, a quiet window onto skills, family warmth, and seasonal lifeways enduring across Canada's Arctic coast. In 1938 London, children raced a game called Push the Peanut, nudging shells along cobbles with their noses, wartime-era laughter briefly eclipsing rationing, air raid drills, and the gathering shadow over Europe. Barefoot beside a quiet riverbank in 1890, a young woman rinses her feet, a pastoral minute preserved before cameras, industry, and city-bound work remapped notions of privacy, leisure, and beauty. In Vienna in 1896, an early street cleaning machine paraded along new boulevards, mechanizing municipal labor and embodying Europe's turn towards sanitation, civic discipline, and the bureaucratic ordering of expanding cities. On May 20, 1945, in Aurich, Germany, Canadian gunners from the 12th Field Regiment read the Maple Leafs victory issue, absorbing peace headlines while demobilization and occupation duties reshaped wartime routines. In Missouri in 1863, a Union soldier sat for a studio portrait, uniform buttons bright against uncertainty, his steady gaze reflecting resolve as the Civil War's brutal campaigns consumed families and farms. In the 1960s, a young Samuel L. Jackson stares down the lens, sharp gaze and unbending poise foreshadowing the presence that would later command stages, protests, and multiplex screens. In German East Africa during World War I, Letzo Vorbeck's column hid tracks by having the youngest soldier jump into an elephant footprint, a guerrilla ploy that showcased improvisation inside colonial campaigns. On June 6, 1944, Canadian troops studied a captured German beach defense plan. Intelligence clarifying obstacles, strongpoints, and fields of fire as assaults pushed inland through Normandy's hedgerows toward France's liberation. Lawmen posed with confiscated bison heads, a stark early 20th century tableau indicting market hunting and recording conservation's rise, from the Lacey Act to refugees, after plains herds were driven perilously close to extinction. In the 1940s, ENIAC, the first general-purpose electronic computer, used vacuum tube banks to compute ballistics, inaugurating programmable speed and launching a trajectory that reshaped science, war, business, and daily life. On September 26, 1950, a U.S. Marine tank rolled through a village street behind a file of prisoners during the Korean War campaign, a scene of armored thrusts, surrender, and uncertain lines. In 1923, Turan racing cars attacked the rooftop track of Fiat's Lingotto factory, an architectural manifesto where reinforced concrete, helical ramps, and speed blended industrial modernism with Italy's expanding automotive aspirations. On May 9, 1943, during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Waffen-SS soldiers drove a Jewish man from a bunker, a searing image exposing terror and the crushing machinery of Nazi occupation in Poland. In the United States in 1950, a cheerful timeline charted shrinking donut holes, a lighthearted record of changing standards, marketing, and taste within the everyday evolution of American mass-produced sweets. In a smoky Paris cellar in 1951, a young couple swayed to bebop, freedom cresting with brush cymbals and bass lines as post-war nightlife remade etiquette, romance, and the city's rhythm. In 1952, a schoolgirl vaulted above 6 classmates with fearless poise, a small miracle of playground athletics that celebrated determination, post-war physical education, and the widening horizon of girls' ambitions. At Auschwitz in 1940, children peer through barbed wire in striped uniforms, small faces recording a regime that erased futures, a memory anchoring humanity's reckoning with industrialized murder. In 1909, a photographer stands beside a bulky camera and tripod, reminding viewers that early images demanded patience, chemistry, and careful composition to preserve fleeting moments before equipment improved. In April 1865, 4 days after Lincoln's assassination, a mourning nation moved down Pennsylvania Avenue beneath black drapery, a public ritual stitching shock into history and inaugurating American remembrance. A Polish girl's Auschwitz identification portrait shows stolen childhood and a vacant stare, one among roughly 230,000 children subjected to forced labor and experiments, an enduring indictment of bureaucratized cruelty. Salvaged from the scuttled cruiser SMS Königsberg, 10 105mm guns were mounted on improvised carriages and hauled into bush warfare, reinforcing German guerrilla tactics across East Africa's long supply lines. On May 17, 1945, near Nammering, a German civilian wept while passing exhumed bodies of 800 slave laborers murdered by SS guards, evidence turning rumor into proof and grief into testimony. In 1954, a New York Port Authority officer patrolled the Lincoln Tunnel on an electric trolley, a modest technology that kept traffic flowing for decades before decommissioning closed a chapter in infrastructure. In 1901, at Manila's Old Bilibid prison, an execution by garrote unfolded before officials and witnesses, a chilling relic of colonial legality and the performative violence of imperial punishment. A Cairo street sweeper around 1919 worked steadily among donkeys, carts, and pedestrians, recording daily rhythm as nationalism, post-war unrest, and urban expansion reshaped neighborhoods along the Nile's commercial corridors. Amid alpine quiet in 1915, Italian soldiers lifted a machine gun, a wounded comrade, and a dog along icy ledges, revealing loyalty, exhaustion, and the madness inherent in mountain warfare. On September 3, 1967, Sweden shifted from left to right driving, Dagen H turning intersections chaotic despite years of planning, a choreography meant to reduce crashes and synchronize traffic with Scandinavian neighbors. In 1961, Alabama, freedom rider James Zwerg lay bloodied after a mob attack, denied care for hours, his endurance exposing segregation's cruelty and the courage required to desegregate American buses and terminals. In 1913 portraits, Tsar Nicholas II's family appears serene, a calm prelude to 1918, when Bolshevik guards executed them in Yekaterinburg, closing Romanov rule and opening Russia's turbulent revolutionary century. A 1973 portrait of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi shows imperial confidence 6 years before exile, the Shah's gaze foreshadowing collapse as protests, oil politics, and clerical opposition ended millennia of monarchy in Iran. In February 1918, decorated young Russian women returned from the front as instructors, demonstrating marksmanship and discipline to recruits, their presence challenging gender norms while sustaining morale amid revolution and civil war. Austro-Hungarian soldiers guarded Russian prisoners during World War I, part of more than 1 million captives consigned to labor camps near railways, where disease, hunger, and distance reshaped families and empires. In Warsaw during 1943, German and auxiliary units crushed the ghetto uprising, patrols stepping over bodies and smoldering bricks, a photograph preserving the price of resistance and the machinery of occupation. In 1918, Grenadier Guards pause from the line to rest, boots off and tea steaming, a brief human interval that reveals endurance beneath artillery barrages and the mud logic of trench warfare. In 1944, aboard a Pacific ship, a teenage Navy gunner gripped twin machine guns and scanned the horizon, his focused expression distilling vigilance, duty, and the peril of carrier raids and convoys. In 1933, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow posed with guns and smirks, celebrity criminals whose exploits dramatized rebellion and the violence of the Depression. A myth soon ended by bullets and roadblocks.